So I'm Julia Davis. I'm the Director of Youth Justice and Child Welfare at the Children's Defense Fund in New York. And I want to thank all my colleagues in Washington, including Manisha, for this conversation and setting this up for us today, and for all of you making this a priority as part of the work that we're doing collaboratively over these 2 days. The panel here is really an extraordinary group, and I'm so excited to introduce them. Elected in 2021, Tishaura O. Jones serves as the 47th mayor of the city of St. Louis and is the first Black woman elected to the position. Born in the city's Walnut Park neighborhood, Mayor Jones is focused on improving services by modernizing city government, addressing root causes of crime to make our neighborhoods safer, and making historic investments in long-neglected communities. Mayor Jones previously served as St. Louis City Treasurer and Assistant Minority Floor Leader at the Missouri House of Representatives. A mayor, but a mom first. She is the proud mother of Aiden. Let's welcome the mayor to the stage. Sarah Berger Gonzalez at the end of the panel is a policy fellow at Chapin Hall at the University of Chicago, leading a body of research and policy work focused on building scalable solutions to address social disparities and inequities facing youth and young adults experiencing homelessness and housing instability. She has been developing, implementing, and evaluating cash transfers nationally and internationally for more than 15 years. She was a Fulbright scholar where she led participatory action research with the indigenous people in Chile. She is deeply committed to reimagining an inclusive and equitable social protection system for children, youth, and families. She's passionate about hikes in our national parks, being a mom to 3 kids, and hip-hop dancing. Sarah is on the stage. My beloved colleague, Jose Perez, is on the stage with us today. He is a poet, an actor, a foster care reform abolitionist and advocate. A native New Yorker, he grew up in Queens as a system-impacted person in foster homes, group homes, and other juvenile institutions. And for Jose, the arts have been synonymous with freedom, fostering spaces where community is forged under the common love for lyrics and unfettered expression. He is especially fond of writing poetry and acting on stage. This has been a catalyst not only to survive those institutions, but also to thrive. While incarcerated, Jose earned an AA from Bard College, a BS from Nyack College through Hudson Link, and capped his academic career with an MPS from the New York Theological Seminary. If you don't know, now you know. He's been a servant leader as an alternatives to violence facilitator, including working with gang-involved youth at the Center for Alternative Sentencing and Employment Services. And currently, Jose is my colleague and the project manager of Youth in Power Transforming Care, the first direct cash transfer project developed with young people with lived expertise in the child welfare system for young people who have survived that system. And I welcome Jose to the conversation today. This is an extraordinary group, and we're talking about a topic that is emergent, that is evolving, that is growing and being defined by the work that we all do in communities today. And so we need to start with some definitions, and I want to start with you, Mayor. What is guaranteed income?
Again, thank you for having me. It's great to be here today. Guaranteed basic income or guaranteed income is simply an income floor. So in St. Louis, we are starting our first ever basic income pilot. Our applications actually closed yesterday. I'm proud to report that during our open enrollment period, we received over 5,400 applications.
Amazing, congratulations.
And so we will be giving families $500 a month for 18 months and no questions asked, but we also are pairing that with benefits navigators so we can make sure that the those who receive public benefits don't get kicked off and know the risks of the program. And I have been trying to start a program like this since before I became mayor for about the last 7 or 8 years. And I'm just so pleased to be able to do that. And we're using the American Rescue Plan Act funds to do it. So we set aside $5 million from our American Rescue Plan Act allocation and received a generous gift from Jack Dorsey, the founder of Twitter. So he gave us another $1 million. It's going to allow us to serve 540 families over the next 18 months.
Amazing, amazing work. Sarah, how would you help us complicate this description of what this is?
No, I think thank you so much again for having me today. And the only thing I would add is just a little bit of background. So, guaranteed income has really emerged, as Julia is saying, as this. It seems very new, but in fact, we have a Johnny Tillman to thank. A lot of people attribute Martin Luther King Jr. He really popularized it, but Johnny Tillman with the National Welfare Rights Organization was the first one because historically Black women, Black mothers were left out and continue to be left out, arguably, of a lot of our safety net programs. And so she, together with a number of other Black women, stood up and said, we really need to rethink the safety net here. We need something. We need a guaranteed income. We need to ensure that our families have the resources, unconditionally, unrestricted cash, so that we can thrive in our communities. And so that's where that first sort of call for a guaranteed income came. Again, MLK Jr. really popularized it. And then we've seen this resurgence. A lot of it came prior to COVID, and COVID then really accelerated this, really in this response and sort of acknowledgement that our families, our households in the US right now are struggling and they're in crisis. And so cash as a tool, guaranteed income as a tool, can serve as one of its many uses to respond to crisis, to stabilize families. So that's just one way as a guaranteed income cash transfer directly to the household with no conditions, and can be used so that they can, in any way they want, right? I mean, that's the benefit of a direct cash transfer, a guaranteed income, is that families and individuals, as the experts of their own lives, can use it to better themselves in the way that they see fit.
And in addition to having this liberation origin, right, coming very much from the seeds of the civil rights movement, an idea that I think is a part of the thread of many people's work in this room. Guaranteed income is also, I think, as you were describing, Mayor, we need to be careful about benefits, we need to be careful about the other systems that we're touching, because the idea, I think, and let me know what you all believe about this, but it's that much of the safety net we've created today is really inadequate. And so that's another reason why we need to be thinking about cash. Do you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely. My father always says that there's not too many problems that access to more money won't solve. And we were very careful in crafting this program. So we're targeting it towards families that have children in public schools in the area. And we have this really convoluted transfer program, but those families are eligible as well because those are public schools. But we also are, we're receiving conflicting information from the federal and state government about the programs that they administer on whether or not this will count as income towards those programs and would possibly kick people off. So HUD was very clear saying that it would not count, so we were thankful for that. But the IRS was a little iffy. It was like, well, since you're putting private money with it, then maybe it might count as income, maybe it won't. And then the state, because we're a blue city in a red state, obviously hasn't given us any direction. So we're really just waiting day by day and just really working with families to just try to make sure that this program doesn't hurt them.
People, I think, don't recognize how challenging it is to give money to people, how much complexity there is around that, and how radical and in some ways, risk-taking it is to be in this work right now because of the uncertainty. And also because, and I mean that both like from a legal and regulatory standpoint, but also from a political standpoint,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Oh, yeah. I was listening to talk radio just yesterday, and one of our outstate Republicans who was just trashing my city was talking about, well, yeah, St. Louis has all this money, and they're giving $500 to people. Well, you're damn right. I'm getting... Because again, people can be trusted to make those decisions about the welfare of their families, because there are so many strings attached to those safety net programs that they cannot make the right decisions for their families for fear of getting kicked off, and then that leaves them in an even worse situation.
Mm-hmm. Jose, I want to ask you a little bit about Youth in Power and who is guaranteed income for? Why is, who are we trying to reach when we're talking about unconditional cash support?
Thank you so much, Julia. Thank you, Mayor, for being here. Thank you, Sarah, for being here and sharing your expertise as well. And thank you all for coming to listen to us today. It's very important for us to understand guaranteed income as not as this idea of you're just throwing money at someone for free, right? It's very important to situate yourself in history. That's why I'm very grateful for the historic, the breadth of history that's on this stage right now. Because if you situate yourself in history, and you just look back when you were a child, right? Or back when you were an emerging adult, you will see why, you will need some support with cash, right? So with my work with Youth in Power, Transforming Care, what we're doing is we're doing something incredible. We're giving 100 young people who have survived the New York City foster care system. We have given 100 of those young people $1,000 a month for 12 months. Yeah. And we're giving them that money along with other components of support, and that involves myself as the project manager, as someone with lived experience, which is very important to note that we're thinking differently for a person to be on this stage who spent the vast majority of his life in systems. Since I was 3 years old, I've been in systems. I'm currently on parole, so I'm still in the system, right? So the idea that our research, right, that comes and shows us what exactly is going on in the picture of what a child, what a emerging adult that's 18 to 22 years old right now, what is going on in their lives. And we realize that there are some significant barriers to economic well-being in their lives, right? They are struggling. They are struggling with employment. They are struggling with housing. They are struggling with mental health. And then they all have different components of identities, right? So we have different identities that we have in which different pockets of issues that people have that another group of people may not have, right? So with that said, right, it's important not to see our young people as not just people who have come from those places, right? Because even though our young people are emerging out of these systems, right, we understand that they are intersecting in other places. Right, there's something we call it the crossover, right? The cross-sectional ways in which, a person experiences the child welfare system along with the adult shelter system, along with SNAP, along with WIC, along with the housing authority at NYCHA with public housing. And all the deficiencies that come with that, along with being over-surveilled in communities where police is just running rampant. I'm happy that we have a mayor on stage that's really doing something in the community. Because I'm in New York City, so And like, so like to believe, along with like a policy as a guaranteed income, right? It should be coupled with two things, right? Because of that cross-sectionality, right? It should be coupled with two things, right? First, right, that we should understand that because there's a cross-section, there's different identities, right? So there's different needs that need to be met. So you need to understand that as a community member, right, there's one person that may need one thing, that person is not a cookie cutter situation where the next person may need that, right? So a guaranteed income with no strings attached affords those people the opportunity to not be able to prove what they're doing with their money. And you don't have to be imposing. It's kind of like white supremacist, colonial type thought to just be imposing on someone and just like, hey, you're gonna do this and I want you to do it this way, or if not, that's not the way to do it. If not, so that's the first thing we need to understand. And then the next thing that we need to understand, right, is that the people who are receiving this benefit are the architects of their own lives. Mm-hmm. And they know exactly what they want. We don't need to be telling them what to do. So I believe that when we do those things, when we keep that in mind, when we situate ourselves in history and in community and in love, we can be able to accomplish all of that.
Jose, my beloved colleague. One of the things I'm hearing from you, Jose, about this intersectionality, about the fact that young people touch multiple systems, is really important for our conversation about guaranteed income, right? Because we have to pick and choose who gets. In our project, it's young people who's aged out of foster care. But when we look at the complexity, as you described, these are also young people that have been arrested. These could be defined as young people who have lived in shelters. These are young people that are living in intergenerational poverty in communities over-surveilled by police. These are young people who are parents. So we can think about, we walked through one door, which was surviving foster care, but we could walk through a lot of other doors to meet our young people in this policy. And Sarah, since you've been looking at this work for 15 years, as you think about who is this policy for, what are you seeing in your work?
Yeah, thanks, Julia. So a couple of things. One is I just want to cite a Merrill Lynch study. I'm not an endorser of Merrill Lynch, but I think it's an important study when we talk about young people, in particular 18 to 27, and who's deserving. There's a conversation, do you deserve this? We need to move away from that conversation of deservedness. But Merrill Lynch put a study out in 2019, and it said that annually, so this is a few years before COVID, $500 billion a year go in cash transfers to young people 18 to 27 in this country. $500 billion. And that is mostly from middle to upper class families, mostly white. So we're already providing cash to young people in this country, and they are making decisions to the best of their ability, the architects of their own lives, on how to spend it on, no shock here, cell phones, cars, and groceries. Because those are the things they need as they are emerging into adulthood. In the work that we're doing, we are working with young people experiencing homelessness, 18 to 24. And when we talk about intersectionality, all those intersectionalities are there. All those crossovers are there, right? We see young people who have been system involved. We see young people who are parenting, who themselves are experiencing homelessness, and now their children are experiencing homelessness. So now this is an intergenerational cycle that needs to be broken. And so when we think about guaranteed income, I really like to refer to, there's the Belonging Institute at Berkeley. John Powell writes a lot about targeted universalism. And I like this approach because it's really saying that no one should be falling through the cracks here, right? It's really not, it's about standing with people at the margins, not standing for them, not speaking for them, but standing with them to remove those margins. And we can only do that by saying universally, this should be for anyone who needs it right now, so that no one is falling through the cracks. And so this approach of saying it's universally for there, and there's a targeted approach to ensure that young people who are coming out of the child welfare system, young people who have been system involved, young people who are experiencing homelessness, families who are experiencing homelessness, people who are undocumented and can't qualify for any of these programs, right? This is an opportunity to ensure that they also have a level of stability as they are emerging into adulthood or as they're moving into communities to thrive better. So really thinking about it more holistically.
I think everyone is in different stages of this work. Mayor, congratulations on so many applicants to the program. I am curious from each of your perspective, what are you learning from starting, from initiating, from the research? Let me start with you, Mayor.
So even though our Guaranteed Basic Income program is just starting, this isn't the first time we've given direct cash assistance to our citizens. At the beginning of my term, when we first started spending ARPA funds, we set aside money to do a direct cash assistance program and gave $500, a one-time $500 payment to over 9,000 St. Louisans. And we found that they spent that money on the things that they needed. And it came right around Christmas time, so it was right on time for a lot of families. We heard feedback from people that spend it on a new coat, or one woman said she got a chance to buy a new bra. There were people who, there was a woman who needed the money so she could stay at home longer and take care of her mother. So a myriad of stories. People would stop me in the grocery store on parade routes and say, "Thank you for that money, Mayor Jones." So we knew that providing money to people works. Yes. We knew that they could be trusted to spend the money on things that they needed.
Mm-hmm. Sarah, I mean, you've seen this in a number of different settings. Like, what are we learning?
If the children are eligible for programs, still will not access those programs. So you've got this added barrier, right, where even just the perception, the perceived threat of this having an impact on them, negative impact, will keep them from wanting to access programs. And so I am interested in this, right? Like what is the involvement of these groups in your pilot programs? Obviously we have like bigger strategies to try to address this anti-immigrant rhetoric, right? But very particularly with these pilot programs, what are we seeing with immigrant families?
Who wants to take this one?
So we realized that immigrant families may or may not want to participate. So we did direct outreach to our international institute that works with immigrant and migrant families in the city to try to entice them and encourage them to apply. Our application is really simple. It's just proof that you are a city resident, that you have, the income level is 170% of the federal poverty level, which for family 4 is about $55,000. And proof that your child is in a public school, so their schedule, their report cards. So we tried to make the eligibility really simple so that our immigrant families could apply.
Sarah.
So for the Trust Youth Initiative for young people experiencing homelessness, we have about 5 people in New York City right now who are receiving the cash. We have, I think we have a dozen who are also participating in the research itself, who are undocumented. And then in California, we have a handful of young people who are also receiving cash. Because our eligibility is age, 18 to 24, and experiencing homelessness, that could be, you could be experiencing homelessness living in a car, you could be sleeping on a couch, which we often see for young people, you could be in a shelter, you could be in and out of a drop-in center. We also, what about community colleges, right? So there's a host of young people coming from very different places. Just because they're undocumented does not stop us from welcoming them into the program. And in fact, some of the payment processors, the way that people are receiving cash, we want to ensure there's an option for them. So if they do not have a Social Security card or they are not banked, they have that option to do that and participate. So in benefits counseling just looks different because oftentimes they don't have access to a lot of those benefits. So.
Yeah, and I don't know, Jose, if you want to talk a little bit about sort of our approach to outreach. in Youth in Power. Eligibility in Youth in Power, 18 to 22, aged out of foster care, meaning legal system terminated your familial relationships. And living in New York City, there is no prohibition based on being undocumented. But I think what was interesting was sort of Jose's leading work to like communicate about this in the community. Maybe talk a minute about that. The outreach. Yeah.
I mean, the criteria was established by our young people. I think that's important to note, that, you know, young people, youth action organizers and youth action researchers got together, did a whole bunch of research on criterias, on other cash transfer pilots, did a history. We went through a whole trainings. We went through historical sort of like trainings where young people learn about the history of cash transfers. And then, you know, we went through that process, and our young people developed this criteria. But we put out a application last May. And through that application, we received hundreds of applicants from New York City, in which they were 100 was selected through a lottery process, in which those 100, we wanted to make sure that each the 100 represented demographically people aging out of foster care. We wanted to make sure that we represent demographically, so that, you know, we have some research, you know, at the end of this. We've been collecting research so far lately, and it's been wonderful because, you know, everything has been with our young people, but the other part of it is, you know, that part, that logistical part, but then there's also being a mentor, being there, you know, to take the text message about what's going on in their lives and all the things that's going on. So it goes, it's a dual thing, you know.
I'm going to take one from the notes, and then we'll go back into the audience for the next one. So this is a question about, which I hear all the time. If we give people money, are they going to work? Are they not going to work anymore? How does that come up for you in the work you're doing?
So when we had our press conference to announce the beginning of the interest period for the program, we had one of the participants from the Stockton pilot participate in our press conference, and he talked about how that program allowed him to only be able to work one job, to spend more time with his family, to spend more time with his daughter, and help her with school. So, and as you talked about, it allows people to, you know, work like everybody else, like one job, to be able to provide for themselves and provide for their families. So it actually helps people do more. There are people who go back to school because they have extra time. There are people who go back to you know, other training programs and improve their skills to be able to get a better job, to be able to provide for their families on an even better level.
It's really powerful to hear you say that. And, you know, Sarah, I know your work in this space recently, the white paper you put out on this that catalogs this unequivocally. Do you want to talk about it too?
Yeah, I mean, this is like the age-old question. I mean, it's either you get one of two, like, aren't they going to spend it on drugs and alcohol, or are they going to stop working? These are the two questions I always get, right? I mean, economists love this question. I feel I worked at the World Bank, and this was like an obsession, to the point of like, why are we still obsessing over this? First of all, I mean, just think logistically for 1 second. $500 a month for 12 months. No one can live off of $6,000 a year in this country, let alone 12,000, right? So, or 24, the federal poverty line for two people. Like, I mean, it's just wild, right? So just logistically pause and think about that for 1 second, just on a really numbers level. But the other thing too is, you know, we see time and again, you know, we hear mothers, the Jackson, Mississippi pilot, they said, you know, what this allowed me to do is actually go to part-time so I could be home for when my kids come home from school. right? Or to care for someone in the household. We saw this, the Alaska Permanent Fund Dividend, which is the largest natural experiment of cash transfers. It's been going on for 40 plus years. There was a huge study around are people leaving work? And what they actually found is people went from full-time to part-time, again, so they could be home with their kids or to take care of a sick family member. And so what we're not seeing people leaving the workforce in droves. We're actually just seeing a more balanced approach to work and life. And you know, we, as I mentioned earlier with young people, right, they are leaving 3 1099 jobs, they're leaving 2 to work 1 so that they can have a little bit more balance in their lives. And so our hope is then, for at least in our pilot right now, is that then they're gonna be investing in education, employment, training opportunities so that when this intervention ends, that they have a clearer pathway to stability.
Oh, sorry, you guys tell me who you, okay, great.
Hi, I'm Graciela Camarena, also from the Texas office, and I guess, Esther, we kind of think alike, although our offices are a little far away. I was also thinking about families, especially when the PEBT, the pandemic electronic benefit transfer, happened. Many families that don't usually access benefits, don't have access to benefits, just were able to thrive, were able to eat. This was for SNAP, so again, it was benefits for food money. But we saw this as we were doing our outreach, that this helped the family with the little money that they were able to have to buy school supplies, to buy that winter coat, to be able to pay that electricity. So it was very important. So my question to the mayor is, how do we approach our mayors with those first steps to try to identify those funds in the community, to bring those for families who don't regularly qualify for other benefit programs?
I would say pay attention to the budget process. Usually a city's budget outlines their morals and what they care about. And in St. Louis, we care about providing for families. So I would say pay attention to the budget process. A lot of times people don't, and a lot of things get passed and people aren't paying attention.
I have one in my lap, and then we'll go back into the room, and we only have 5 more minutes left. This is the beginning of a conversation about an issue that we all have an opportunity to shape, so hopefully this has just gotten folks' juices flowing. Mayor, this is for you. Can you talk a little bit how you were helping recipients, I guess probably in the earlier project, protect themselves from unintended harm? I think meaning like the benefits that they might lose or benefits cliffs. Could you talk about how you manage that?
So there was also criteria in the direct cash assistance program. I think you had to be 80% AMI. And we also had benefits navigators attached to that program as well. So we wanted to make sure, again, that that this extra $500 didn't harm anybody or kick anybody off, but we also were in the middle of COVID, so we had a few waivers from the federal government at the time that they didn't count that money as income.
And those waivers, and Sarah, you may also weigh in on this too. I mean, these were temporary measures, right? They gave us some flexibility.
They were temporary. They expired this year.
Right. So as we're building this policy going forward, part of what we're looking at is how the landscape of the things we're navigating is changing, and ways we might be able to hold on to some of the flexibility that we had during the pandemic that may be benefit for us long term.
Yeah, and I think I would add too, I think talking to your state legislators, right? There's a lot of flexibility in TANF and the way that the legislation is written. A lot of it is if there's cash transfers that support the general welfare, that's very expansive, that definition, right, of an individual. There are ways to either write new legislation, as we did in New York, in the state of New York, and which allows for that to be longer term coverage, that waiver to be in effect, outweighing the length of the program. And there are a lot of states who have thought really creatively about this: New York, Minnesota, California, Illinois, and I think a few others. And so I think looking for loopholes, again, not sort of breaking rules, but getting around the rules, and allows for that creativity to ensure that that there is that protection, that we're not creating another benefits cliff for these families.
Not to be political, but those states all have Democratic Democratic
yes,
governors.
they do.
Surprising.
Yes,
Surprising.
they do.
So when you're in a red state like I am, you have to be really, really creative at the local level.
Yeah, thank you for keeping that frame on it. Right. Let's have one last question to take us out.
Oh, thank you. I just want to say, my name is Nat Letha. I am working in the Children's Defense Fund, Minnesota, and you are right. We have a Democratic trifecta right now. So we have a Democratic governor, and then our House and our Senate is also Democrat right now. So we have been able to pass, we were just able to pass the child tax credit, which is something that, a lot of states have not done. But I do want to just kind of go back to that conversation. I wanted to add to the conversation where we're kind of talking about the questions that we get about giving people free money. And I want to echo what you said, like people cannot live off of $500. So usually what I say is, it allows people, guaranteed income allows people to pursue happiness in whatever way that looks like for them. And we, the Children's Defense Fund Minnesota, we were able to use our economic stability indicator calculator that we work with families to do kind of benefit counselings, which tells them what programs they're going to lose or where they're going to be hit. And then so that they're making that informed choice to participate in guaranteed basic income or not. So there are several pilots going on in our state right now, one with the city of St. Paul, so Mayor Carter is on his second round of pilot. There are also some pilots with the International Institute for Refugees. There are other cash transfer pilots going on all over the state in some of the counties as well, that we're really excited that this is kind of like taking ground in Minnesota. But as we're working with these guaranteed basic income pilots and the child tax credit, we're seeing that, like you said, the waivers are temporary. We were able to get some waivers, but we're seeing that some of the interactions with federal programs, kind of like SNAP, is hard, and we can get creative in our state in how we are, with the waivers and everything, but at the end of the day, when the program is kind of attached to federal policies, you do kind of have to address that so that you don't hurt families or even the state administration. So I'm just wondering, in your research, kind of what have you seen, like, especially with the SNAP issue, how do you think we can kind of navigate that? Where do we start?
Well, I think, thank you so much for your question. And yes, Minnesota has passed a lot of really exciting legislation. And I got to be part of the legislative session this last March, and it was really great to be on the Hill there. And so I think a couple things. One is FNS, the Food and Nutrition Services, so where SNAP is run under right now, about a year and a half ago, they saw this huge emergence of cash transfers. And it used to be that only private dollars, if a cash transfer was funded by only private dollars, back up. States can have what's called a state option with TANF. So TANF, if a state says these TANF dollars will not count as income for, these cash transfers will not count as income for TANF. If the state says that, they have the ability to say that. Through adjunctive or categorical eligibility, SNAP recipients or recipients of SNAP, that should also not count as income. FNS for a while said only if those cash transfers are private dollars, then that income waiver will hold. No longer the case. So about 2 years ago, the state of California went straight to FNS and said, we can't do this, like this is crazy. We want to do our own cash transfer pilot, but with public dollars. And they said, okay, maybe 50-50. If you have 50% of the cash transfers covering from private dollars and 50% are coming from public dollars, then we'll let you count for this income disregard for SNAP benefits. Now it's any percentage. So I used to joke and say, well, then I'm going to donate $500 of my own money, or $45, and whatever it is. All it needs to be is $1 of that mix of dollars of cash transfers of private dollars. The rest could be public funded. So there are creative ways to look at it, and that was through a lot of pressure. FNS, HUD just came out in September and said, so they had a ruling that was done in 2016 called HOTMA. That has subsequently been passed, but HUD just came out and said, if you have these waivers for TANF and SNAP, guess what? the income disregard also counts for any federal rental assistance programs as well. So little by little, I think some of the federal government is really starting to take hold of this and recognize that if we are punishing individuals and families for receiving additional cash to improve their general welfare by taking away existing benefits, we're making them worse off. And guess what? They're gonna end right back up in line asking for more, the same if not more benefits. So allowing for that stability, I think they're starting to see that, again, looking at this more holistically, or looking at the person more holistically, allows them to then see that people are made whole when you are not pulling things from them by giving them something else.
Sarah, Jose, Mayor Jones, thank you. Thank you for being part of this conversation today. Thank all of you for being part of this. Enjoy your lunch and the rest of the program.
Can we get a picture?
Oh yeah, can we get a picture?